Hello, everyone. This is Ovester. I was truly excited about this week's blog to talk about a story of influence over my ministry and leadership. I figured I'd just do it. I was so excited when I read the email. I figured I'd just do it from the confines of my own home right now. Because really, the main story that has influenced me as both as a Christian and as a leader is one story. That is that of my pastor, Pastor Perry Bennett, who for over 45 years has been pastoring a Baptist church in Rockford, Illinois, called Macedonia Baptist Church. Um, when I first started out in preaching and ministering, Pastor Bennett would often tell me the story of his start from becoming a deacon to a pastor. But the main story that stuck out to me was when he tells of his first and only pastorate, when he first got called to Macedonia Baptist Church. At the time, Macedonia Baptist Church was a very small church in a smaller building. And there were only 3 to 4 families at the church. This was back in 1972. And at that time, Pastor Bennett, for a good while, traveled from Joliet, Illinois to Rockford, Illinois, which roughly is almost a 2-hour drive one way. Um, there would be a one family in particular that had 5 other girls that would house both him and his wife on weekends that he had to preach on Sundays. And then he would often drive them back home to Joliet, and then he would go back and forth to work at a factory called Caterpillar during the course of the week. Um, well, after a while, that ministry grew in a span of 5 to 6 years, in which multiple families joined the church. And eventually, the church acquired a parsonage for Pastor Bennett, or housing, where he did not have to drive back and forth. Um, the reason that story has often influenced me is because Pastor Bennett always said that upon pulling up to the church, it was a small church with not many people. But he knew that if he was faithful to God and obedient to God's call to pastor that church and to minister to that church, he would be blessed. He was actually called during the same time that he got called to Macedonia. He was called to much bigger churches that were actually closer to his home. But after doing a lot of soul searching and praying, God called him to this small church. And the story goes that he would often say to himself, God, why did you call me here? Why am I here? There are not that many people here. I'm driving all these miles. I have a family of my own. I'm tired. Why did you call me to this town that's so far away from where he lived? But he often said, in telling this story, that he had a burden of his, well, not much a burden, but he felt called to this ministry. And that story has always influenced me for 2 different reasons. The first reason is mainly faith in ministry. Whenever am frustrated over the amount of people in my congregation, or the direction that our congregation is headed, I think about that story, because that story has always been a lesson of faith for me. That if you remain faithful to what God has called you to, no matter how small it is, God will reward you. The other benefactor that story has influenced me in terms of leadership is the fact that as ministers, we have to be obedient to where God placed us. So we have to be obedient. We have to be obliging. We have to be committed to the call that God gives us. And once we're obedient, once we're faithful, God rewards us. So I think about this story whenever I feel frustrated, whenever I feel down, whenever I feel tired, not just from ministering, but going from work to ministry throughout the course of the week. I think about that Pastor Bennett story of never giving up, never of persevering, and always showing up on Sunday, no matter how tired he was from driving and working at a factory during the course of the week, but showing up on Sunday to be committed to preaching and pastoring the people of God at Macedonia Baptist Church. Today, that church has grown tremendously. It has I would say on a given Sunday, there's a good 100 people in attendance, and sometimes over that. But there's even more than that on the roll. And it all actually came, by the time Reverend Bennett had it in 1972, there were only 3 to 4 families there. And since then, it has grown since. And Pastor Bennett has been pastoring there now for 45 years. And he never gave up, never giving up on ministry, always remaining obedient to God's call. That has shaped me as a minister and now pastor, to always remain obedient to God's call, faithful to God's call, and truly not being frustrated over ministry, but always being motivated for ministry, encouraged and inspired to see the potential in what a ministry can be. Thank you.